I love Fire Emblem to death. I love Fire Emblem communities, and to that end, I've set up shop in the Fire Emblem subreddit for a number of years. But things aren't as they once were. While their drought of relevant content no doubt hasn't helped, the subreddit is somewhat stagnated, and things that may not have been that big of a deal have had some time to get a little stale. Our Fire Emblem could use a bit of a touch-up, and if 3 houses on the horizon, we're well due for it. Here are a few suggestions. The current banner image is designed for the Fire Emblem logo and the snoo to fit between Leaf and Leo. However, it's not properly centered and doesn't extend far enough either left or right, so it breaks at most variations of window size and zoom. Additionally, on mobile, the banner by default pulls from the center of your desktop banner at a 10:3 ratio, which in our case just cuts off about halfway through Leo and Leaf. The banner is presently a hodgepodge of cipher art, which is fine, but after about 10 months, it's well due for an update. Luckily, we just got more 3 houses news, so if that's not reason enough to change it, I don't know what is. If no one on the current team wants to or has time to take a swing at it, there's a sizable number of artists in the Fire Emblem community, and a lack of subreddit events, so opening it up to community submissions might be a way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If a mod team's opposed to leveraging their position to essentially ask for free art with a promise of exposure, as our previous conversations suggested, then I'd be happy to volunteer something myself. I'm a graphic designer, not a digital artist, but since I'm levying these criticisms, it's only fair that I try to pitch in with some solutions. This is a somewhat new addition and not something I'd expect to be immediately addressed, though the hero sub ironed it out immediately, but the drop-down menu that allows you to toggle not safe for work and limiting your search to our Fire Emblem is currently covered up by the automatic placement of a Reddit premium advertisement. That's just a quick fix of CSS. The post flares themselves are currently represented by a slapdash combination of cipher cards and official character art. There's no standardization, and it runs contrary to the sprite stylization of the rest of the subreddit. I'd personally use some of the modern sprite work of Fates, Warriors, Cipher promo material, and now 3 houses in lieu of what we have. While I may sleep below a copy of Thracia 776, I'm not just a media elitist with a design degree, so I'll highlight some of the good things this sub has going for it visually. The overall framing of the sub with Fire Emblem sprite work gives the sub some charm and personality as a Fire Emblem discussion board. Things like the subreddit subscriber box being the FE7 menu selection cursor, the return to top icon being the warp staff, the flare change icon being the second seal, they're all cute. Plus, getting a random stat increase when uploading a post is also an incredibly nice touch. The current subreddit style makes it such that if a post isn't flared by the OP, the upvote symbol won't appear and the post can't be upvoted, unless you're using keyboard shortcuts, the generic subreddit style, or browsing from mobile. This is honestly kind of asinine. It many times leaves the front page looking weirdly non-uniform and leaves smaller posts often die at 0 from the OP just not knowing sub policies. I agree that making people flare their posts is important for subreddit organization, especially with flare filtering, but there's a more elegant solution than just freezing desktop upvotes. May I remind you all of Bot of the Beast, the subreddit's automod that could simply be scripted to post a comment on a post that has been left unflared for more than, say, 10 minutes, reminding the OP to flare their post. Not at all unprecedented. We also currently have 6 post flares: General, Casual, Gameplay, Story, Art, and Recurring. General and Casual have a lot of overlap, while Gameplay and Story don't really hit at the heart of the content being posted most of the time. I'd suggest switching to something like Analysis, where the meat of the content is in the post itself, Serious Discussion, essentially a meteor quick question where the comment debate is the focus, Casual, for off-topic or casual discussion, Humor, jokes, memes, Art, for drawings, cosplay, music, and the like, News, for official information from Nintendo about the games or Cipher news, and Announcements, any pertinent information that the mod team wants to get to the subreddit. The recurring flare is generally less specific to the nature of the post than the other flares and could stand to be axed as a standalone flare. If we keep the ability for users to rename their flares after categorizing them under the main 6, it would still be possible to designate your analysis or discussion flare as recurring after posting. The flares are arranged slightly inefficiently, and old banners and mod sprite sheets still take up space in the style sheet. A bit of spring cleaning would be in order. If the argument for not improving the CSS is due to being at capacity, which it isn't, but let's nip this idea in the bud, deleting and reallocating things would address the issue. The sub has hundreds of flares and they're identified like so. That seems fine, but the CSS file has a limit of 100 kilobytes, not a lot of space. If that limited space presents an issue, reformatting the flares to something like this could cut down on space when expanded to the vast number of flares that the sub currently has. And concession time, tweaking the specific flare syntax would break the currently assigned flares for users and require them to manually pick them again. However, for active users, this really wouldn't be too much of an issue, so long as fair warning is given. flares are currently also picked through an extremely old and cumbersome system. Clicking the Change Flare button on the sub takes you to a page where you can select from a long list of characters with no preview of what the flare will actually look like. Clicking it then just auto-generates a message to Bada with a string that'll prompt a flare change in usually like 30 minutes. Reddit now has a system where you can just click the flare change button and it'll pop out a small window where you can preview the available flares and click what you want then and there. The flare change is pretty much instant. This system allows for easy flare changes from the mobile site and the official Reddit app. Our current flare system also doesn't work on mobile or when not using the subreddit style. This could be easily remedied by giving the flares alt text, and then that alt text would appear as a flare on mobile and generic Reddit. Considering how many people use Reddit from mobile, some exclusively so, this is an update well past due. The current way the sub's custom spoiler tag system works is as follows. It allows the user to show what game is being spoiled alongside the spoiler text, but it doesn't work on mobile or when opting to not use the subreddit style. Using the generic Reddit spoiler format would allow for it to work on both platforms. You can just denote what game the spoiler is for in plain text beforehand. Nothing lost. When you report a post, the reasons given don't directly correspond to our 11 rules. Some options are missing, others just put out of order. There is a limit to the amount of report options that can be displayed, but 2 offenses could easily be combined into 1 option. Easy fix. There are 6 items in the header position of this sub. Seeing as the header contains the most visible links for anyone visiting the sub for the first time, items placed up there should be of utmost importance, or at least good resources. Half of what's up there doesn't warrant the visibility it has. Flare filtering, the general question thread, and the link to the subreddit Discord server are all worth highlighting as such. They're either a good resource or a relevant link to something with a high level of activity. This is, of course, just my opinion, but the IRC channel and the Everybody Plays Fire Emblem thread, while somewhat traversed, don't produce enough meaningful discussion or serve as enough of a relevant resource to be placed as prominently as they are. They would be more at home in a restyled subheader or in the sidebar. The Found Fan Art Hub is, in every sense of the word, a failed endeavor that honestly doesn't warrant being sticky in any way, shape, or form. It was certainly well intended, I won't deny you that, but it's well past due to be shelved. But we'll touch more on that later. Making these changes to the header links would free up 2 spaces for things like a Getting Started guide, which is sorely needed front and center, a link to the relevant mega thread, and it would allow for the Discord link overlaid onto the banner to just be a Discord logo. It's cleaner. I'm gonna hit on this again, but the new player resources on where to start and how to start playing need to be front and center on the header. Someone completely new to Fire Emblem probably isn't going to be familiar enough with a sub to know that we keep that resource for new players in a plain text hyperlink down in the sidebar. It's no wonder that Where Should I Start is such a common post on the sub. In order, the subs linked to in the related subreddit sidebar are a Nintendo Family Master post, our Fire Emblem Casual, our Fire Emblem Fan Art, our RPG Gamers, our My Castle FE, our My Castle FEEU, God that's hard to say, our TMSFE, and our Fire Emblem Heroes. Speaking conservatively, the only sub that needs to be linked in the sidebar is our Fire Emblem Heroes, as the sub self-regulates most heroes discussion by not engaging, and those who want to engage with that sort of content would be well served by being pointed in the right direction. The sites listed in the sidebar should primarily be for reference or to highlight a large Fire Emblem fan community. In order from top to bottom, we have Serenus Forest, the premier Fire Emblem fan site that more than deserves its place among the sidebar links, Fire Emblem Wars of Dragons, a primarily Spanish reference site for the main series games with some pages having toggles for English translation, and the Defi role-playing Discord of 370 people. Since this is meant to be a reference hub for people looking for more information in relevant communities, I'd also link to FireEmblemWiki.org to point users towards a more reliable wiki, FEUniverse.us for the centralized Fire Emblem ROM hacking hub outside of certain Serenus Forest threads, and if we're going to link to community discords, administrators permitting, I'd add a link to the Fire Emblem Compendium Discord. They've proven themselves to be the most organized hub for Fire Emblem fan artists, providing references, artist camaraderie, and many group endeavors that paint the community in a really positive light. I'd be lying if I said I think the role-playing Discord warrants the sidebar link, as a cursory glance paints it as small and scarcely active, but this is so far out of my wheelhouse I don't really feel comfortable making a judgment either way. Here's a quick mock-up of what these changes might look like when put into practice. The current policy on the sub regarding art is as follows. Non-OC art cannot be posted unless it's been commissioned or is from an official channel. Comics are fine to post, original content or not, as they generate more discussion than a single post, though sourcing the author is required. Things such as cosplay are evaluated by the same rules as fan art. If you didn't make it, you're not posting it. This policy, barring a few edge cases, is great. The somewhat frequent occurrence of people posting unsourced fan art could be solved through an automatic bot reminder on fan art posts, similar to subreddits like r/anime, who see a fair amount of non-original content art. I mentioned earlier that the found fan art thread was a well-intentioned failure, and I don't mean that maliciously. The sub used to be flooded with people just dropping in to post unsourced, non-OC, or non-commissioned art, and the nature of Reddit meant that these lower-effort posts would dominate the front page. There was a need to address this, I'll admit, but honestly, it might be worth your while just to ban the posting of non-OC art on this sub. The megathread format just doesn't work, and relegating all found fan art to it is tantamount to disallowing it altogether. Now, there are a few edge cases I've seen where the artist doesn't have a Reddit, but gave individual express permission for someone to post to the sub on their behalf, but those are infrequent enough to probably be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. There actually aren't too many functionality issues here. Worst thing I could say is that you could maybe stand to allow for more user colors and be a bit more open to adding temporary channels to keep the lone off-topic games channel from being dominated by a single topic. However, I've seen more than a few instances of repeated harassment going on over on the Discord, and I've been both told by others and seen for myself that many of the rules around that sort of thing just aren't enforced. At all. I don't present a solution more complex than actually enforcing your rules and punishing repeat offenders, but I'd be remiss to not at least acknowledge this issue. So currently, when a post is removed, there is generally no blurb stating why it was removed, or even that it was removed. Seeing as these reasons for removal are generally standardized in the rules, having canned responses for removals with occasional explanation when necessary seems like a no-brainer, as it allows for transparency and accountability of mod actions. I'd be lying if I said I don't have a horse in this race, but it's a system that's well past due for some change. And here's where it gets a little awkward. The 20-con elephant in the room, so to speak. A cursory glance at our mod team's Reddit profiles, at least at the time of writing the script, makes it apparent that many of them don't interact much with the Fire Emblem subreddit. I freely acknowledge the possibility of alternate accounts or just a watchful lurking, but I'd be lying if I said I don't find it a little disconcerting that it appears a good chunk of the mod team hardly engages, if they even engage at all, with a community they moderate. I don't like addressing this individually, as I realize this could be taken personally, so I first popped over to the mod team for further clarification. With that in mind, here's a summary of the mod activity in the subreddit, supplemented by further context from my chat with the mod team. Hopefully this might shed some light on things. Of our current mod team of 10 people at the time of writing this, 4 of them, Gigamecha Wolf, Mobius1, Apathetic Radiance, and Spizor are largely inactive on Reddit as a whole. As for the mod team's rebuttal, Giga and Mobius literally can't be removed due to their status as founding moderators. Fair. Apathetic Radiance, while certainly inactive publicly, apparently has provided useful help behind the silver curtain. Spizor was removed as a mod as soon as I brought it to the team's attention. That was just a whoopsie on their part. And Gwimpage, while still active-ish on Reddit and Twitch, love your speedruns by the way, has been inactive on this subreddit for a long time, and his activity on the sub fell off hard between the end of 2016 and the start of 2018. I didn't really receive any further context for this from the mod team. V2 Blast appears to be a power mod of an absolutely absurd number of subreddits, 112 to be exact, and I can't find much in the way of recent moderation activity or community interaction with this sub specifically. However, the ginormous amount of mod activity he has on other subreddits very well could have buried the stray post or two here. As for clarification from the mods, while he doesn't participate in the sub, his experience as a power mod apparently proves useful when dealing with the auto-moderation tools. Shepin and Leon engage with this sub with some degree of frequency from the moderation side of things, and very occasionally engage from the perspective of a community member. As for the response, they find that chatting with the community results in being treated a little unfavorably in conversation, and prefer to remain behind the scenes. Lamina Usa engages rather frequently from the perspective of a community member, and Okafak engages pretty frequently with the subreddit as both a moderator and a community member. No further context was really required for this one. Of those 10, at the time of writing, only 4 engage with the sub with varying levels of frequency. 4 appear to just be wholly inactive, and 2 operate entirely behind the scenes. Now, many members of the current mod team have been mods for years. Life changes, and it's perfectly reasonable that as time moved on, be it due to lack of interest, motivation, or availability, you might spend less and less time with the subreddit. That's no point of shame. The Blind Coco was a great mod for a fair while, but he ended up stepping down when he felt that he couldn't have a presence on the sub he moderated. Given that this sub's activity is only going to skyrocket as we approach the house's release date, 4 to 6 mods of varying activity is honestly a little low, especially with the amount of housekeeping that's piling up. The moderators are the people who move the sub forward in policy, design, functionality, and community engagement. So having people who are invested in the growth and development of this subreddit is paramount to this Fire Emblem community thriving. If that isn't necessarily your bag, that's fine, but there are more than a few people who would be willing to step up and take that initiative. And that's it. Like with the Fire Emblem series itself, I only criticize this sub because I truly do love it and I want to see it do better. And hats off to those of you who strive to make this sub a great place to be. May the RNG roll kindly for you. And to those of you newbies who flooded in thanks to the 3 Houses news, enjoy your stay. Grab a flare while you get settled in. I've been Cyanyo. Keep it groovy.